Hello,
Hey,
Abercrombie. We're going to be sending our agents to these meetings soon.
yeah, good idea.
I just posted in the what do you call it, Discord earlier about this remote labor index where they're looking at how well these agents that are supposedly going to replace us, how well do they actually do these human jobs that we pay people for? And they say at the high end, the best case scenario, they're able to accomplish these tasks at about 2.5% rate. So we,
2.5% of the task or 2.5% correct?
yeah, both, Stephen.
Okay, with
No, to finish,
2.5%
I think
volume
to
task.
accomplish the task. I don't actually, we can read it,
Okay.
but I don't know if it's correct when they do accomplish it. Um, so they say an automation rate.
Then it's effectively replaced
Right.
2.5% of it. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So if you take a person's job and you want to automate that via an agent,
right.
the maximum automation rate they get is 2.5%.
So why is everybody screaming in Silicon Valley about all the programmers being let go for AI coding?
Boost the stock price.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I'm working with ChatGPT to help me automate JSON schema, both modeling it as an architecture and generating it. And you have no idea how many hours I have burned going, well, that didn't work. Here's the code. Well, oh yeah, I figured it out. Going through that, here's the answer, and no, it doesn't work. Oh, yeah, I got it now for hours.
So for I guess in all of our work, 2.5% is easy to achieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this has like just editing, fix my typos, anything would be counted as 2.5%
Right, right. Yeah,
easily.
just
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, just nudging in the right direction is
So I
2.5%.
got the use of the because I was away for the last meeting, and instead of watching the video, now they have a summary. I just read the summary. It's a lot quicker. It's a one page.
Yes.
um, that will be more than 2.5%.
Well, one of the projects I'm on right now, I'm forced to use Teams, and I'm not comfortable with it. I don't know my way around very well, but it's like the minute you finish a meeting, it's bing, here's a recording, bing, here's a summary, and so they're really doing a good job of
Right.
bringing everything
Right,
together.
but Teams also has access to everything, right? Your email, your chat, as long as you're in the Teams metaverse, right?
Hmm.
They have
Hmm.
everything. If you look at like a Zoom meeting summarizer, whatever it's called, right? the context it has is that meeting. It's that
Yeah.
60 minutes. That's all it knows. It doesn't know anything about the terminology. So
Yeah,
imagine
yeah.
if you had the access to all the enterprise data and you knew exactly what the terminology meant, right? I mean, it's got to be by far superior, but you've also given it access to everything, which is mind-boggling. And my wife is a big anti-tech person, and people in the office are screaming, "Oh, you got to use Copilot and Copilot," and she really dug her heels in, like trying not to. And then someone just said, I don't know, somebody was retiring or something, and they said you have to send a nice email thanking them for their blah blah blah. She said, "I don't have time for that." They said, "Just use Copilot," and she did, and now she loves it.
Yeah, converted. Yeah.
Well, you know, so certainly, like I said, I mean, the only reason I'm getting any results out of ChatGPT is I know exactly what I'm expecting it to produce and know when
Right.
it's off the rails. So the problem in getting rid of all the junior programmers is where are the experienced people going to come from if you don't start bringing people in and moving them up the experience curve?
But that's
You
the
know,
same problem we've had for a long time. I mean, if you look at like we had the discussion with a lawyer not too long ago, and they said, well, if all the draft work is done by AI, then who's going to learn how to draft? Same thing with coders, right? Who's going to learn to be a junior? There's no job for junior programmers because you could use AI to do a lot of that stuff. Like certainly stuff that it doesn't have to know very much about, except I think like test units are like, it's pretty good at doing test units, but you mean that you gave it all the logic already to test. So it knows, how to do a decision matrix, let's say, and test every combination permutation, but it's not really good at writing, the business logic straight out of the gate because there's so much context behind it. So some things are easier for it to do for sure, but you still have to know the right answer, right? Even when it says, "Oh, I did it and it works," and it passes the test, you have to look at the test to see what did you test exactly.
Mm-hmm.
and
So you
and
still
so
have to have, like Neil said, you still have to know what the right answer is. You may not know how to get there. Like in my case, a lot of times I don't really know how to get there, but I know very well what I want. Like I have the requirements in my head and I give it the requirements and I say, these are the requirements. This is what it means to be successful. Right. So you still have to have that higher level idea of what is right. And it doesn't. I mean, it can't, to be fair, unless it had all your data.
Yeah.
well, to add to that, the one thing is the code that is being generated. I couldn't maintain that. It's using,
No.
single letter variables, no comments, no the organization. It turns the decomposition into components. I'm going, oh, what were you thinking? Why did you break it up that way?
You know what my theory of that is? Because I let it sometimes when you just let it go wild because you can't keep up with the stuff that it's turning out. I think it's building a dependency on it because you can't maintain that stuff, right? And it'll
Mhm.
take like 100 lines of code and make it 1,000 in 5 seconds.
That's what
And that's a big problem because I don't want it to do that. My code before was like good or bad, it was like manageable. But when it goes on a tangent and it says, "Oh, let me optimize," or "Let me do this," or "How would you like this feature now?" Right? It keeps asking you, "Let's do this now." Right? It's always, I think, of keeping you hooked on. Right? And then at some point when the code is just so crazy that you have no choice, but you can't even rename a variable because it gets upset with you. It says, "Oh, I see the user changed the name here." Like it's belligerent sometimes, right? Or if I say, "Well, so and so A and I suggested this," right? If I was using something very specific to a platform, it'll come back and it gets really snippy. It's wrong. It doesn't understand. It's like bitchy sometimes with me.
maybe that's the intent is that if the short term a company that uses AI would win, then it doesn't matter the outcome because by the time you realize the outcome, like in the long run, there may be problems. Well, they already win. Maybe the other party is probably went bankrupt already, and maybe that is the sort of the competitive edge you can have.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
Anyway.
let me
Got a
Sure.
couple of anecdotes to chuck into that conversation. So a friend of mine has got a startup and he's been using Claude Code heavily. And the first time he asked it to run a bunch of tests, it came back with big green ticks against everything. And then when he dug into it, he realized that it completely faked all of the tests. So that's the first one.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I'll put the link in the chat, but one of the guys I follow on LinkedIn had done a sort of an experiment where he'd used Claude Code, I think it was, to develop an application, which it did in record time. And I don't think they put it in production, but something went wrong with it. And immediately he realized the main issue was he didn't understand the code properly because he hadn't been involved enough. He hadn't done that like solution architecture piece up front. He deliberately did everything using AI as an experiment, but he quickly realized that I think his conclusion was good for demos, bad for production.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Well, in my case, what it did, because I used Claude also, was I said you have to pass these test suites because I know they work. And what it did was it gutted my code, and the only code it has was the actual answer to the tests. So the test passed. So it's like you said to someone, here's a recipe to bake a cake. And instead of actually using the recipe, it went out and bought a cake, put that in the oven, and you take it out and yeah, it passed the test. It's a chocolate cake. Congratulations. But it gutted everything. And it actually boasted about how it optimized my code from whatever lines to whatever. And I said, there's no way you could have possibly done that. And I take a look at the code and it just, the code was the answer to the test.
It reminds
cheated.
me of outsourcing. Isn't that about
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reverse delegation.
Yeah. Excuse me. Okay, let me just put on the agenda and give everyone the notice on antitrust policy and Trust YP's IPR policy on the top. And then I don't think we have anyone new today. In terms of action item, I think there's a one. This is anybody know this link? Then I can go track it down and see on the bottom talking about the Google Drive.
Oh, yeah, let me see.
If anyone know a link to that, this is the problem of Google Drive. It's very hard to.
I'll get it for you.
Yeah, thank you. Beyond that, I guess we are sharing kind of a news already, but last week, I don't know who's there. There's a, sorry, where is it? Oh, okay, I'm jumping to wrong place. So we do need to prepare for the virtual symposium. November 19 to 20 is getting very close, so 3 weeks away. I've signed up to do a TSP presentation and then the running MCP over TSP presentation.
Oh, you've got two. You signed up for two presentations, but no.
I did, yeah. I thought there would be a lot, so I did sign up for two. Those two are relatively okay. Then because no one's doing anything, so I signed up for a workshop as well the next day, which I may have to bail. I don't know, because that will require a lot of preparation for like code segments, and I presumably the workshop would need to go through a little bit of a like how do you develop X, right, something like that. So anyhow, so those are the three ones already. I'm personally agreed to earlier anyway. And I think, Eric, you have a topic there too.
I'm just going to do a little quick Trust over IP 5-year recap, sort of
Nice.
where we've come from, where we are now, and where we're going. And because I think we've made quite a bit of progress in 5 years. And I think people quickly forget, and this is one of the, little spoiler, is that, Trust over IP was born during COVID, or like a little COVID baby.
Yeah.
And the world was so different. If we just remember back what was happening in 2020. And so it's a nice little reflection on, where we started and where we are now and where we're going.
Good. Anyone else was sorry, presenting for those 2 days? Okay.
By the
Well,
way, just look for the Google Drive, the Trust over IP. I don't know where they went. I have no access to any of the shared drives anymore, which kind of sucks because I have some documents there.
yeah, it's my problem is that hard to search, right? Can you search Google Drive?
You can, I mean, it's searched Google, but
So if you say like Trust over IP AIM working group Google Drive, would that find the link for me? Anyway.
yeah.
I just posted the link in the chat. In the last 24 or 48 hours, there have been some problems. They were doing some maintenance in there, and suddenly everybody had no access. So I would
Oh,
suggest you check
it's
that
okay.
link and see if it has.
I see. Okay, will do. Will do. So the other conference, I guess, related to us is the LFDT Member Summit is in Jersey City. I went there last time in San Francisco. It's because it's close by. But most of the people are going to be, ledger and blockchain related. But it is a good opportunity to meet. If you are nearby in New York City, that's probably a good place. Any other news to share? I did want to mention the OpenAI just released a browser.
Atlas, no.
Yeah.
No. I haven't tried. So this is for the group. I would be so much more fluent with AI agents, and I guess this is sort of the AI or things like this, but I'm in some ways refusing because I'm just so scared of like just opening up my digital DNA to them, and I feel like
Right.
I'm holding myself back because I know what's at stake, and I just refuse to just sort of open it up. Whereas I see all these young kids are like, yeah, just going forward and advancing. And so I'm wondering if I need to, set up the great Eric firewall
The
so that I can.
browser is gaining so much of our trust. It's
Yeah,
amazing amount of information the browser knows.
yeah,
We treat it almost like an operating system. We assume
yeah.
the browser is somehow safe and et cetera, and we tell everything.
Mhm.
And, we're basically unconditionally trusting the browser. Yeah.
Well, and then I mean, I did
And
see
by extension, the search capabilities in each browser.
Yeah, not just the browser software instance and it knows about, but also the server or the backend of the browser, right, doing all the search, also know about those too. So it's a huge amount of information we tell them.
and I did read a post where somebody said, okay, I downloaded it, and then I went and dug into, what it's gaining access to, and it gains access to quite a lot.
Yeah, seems to me like it's basically everything the browser knows, it knows as well. right? So yeah.
Yeah, but if anybody has suggestions on how to sort of jump into all this AI stuff without also giving away your digital sort of trove of data.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't share like my email or calendar with it. I wouldn't share any of that stuff. But as long
I
as
know, but
you,
that's it. But that's what I wanted to help with.
oh, then suck it up, Buttercup. Just take the red pill and move on.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, both of the we can come maybe could go to the next bullet item. I don't know who of you are in IW. I went there in the very end, so didn't see probably didn't see you guys. I also went to the very end of the PyTorch conference on the same week, and they also have an agents. It's called Open Agent Summit there. Unfortunately, I have to report that there are definitely more people working on how to make the agent know more and more than what we are trying to say. Well, what we don't have to tell the agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's put it this way. Over in the diff project, I'm working on the hospitality travel profile.
Yeah.
Is a lot of discussion happening right now in terms of risk. So cyber risk. So what does it do? And what there's a formula that we're actually looking to try and talk to some actual insuring agents at Chubb. So there's some contacts being there, and they put a huge amount of risk potential in personal data.
Yeah.
Now, how much have you got it? How personal is it? And literally, if you have a poor score, it can double your organizational cyber insurance. So now it's an economic issue right in the pocketbook. So if you're collecting huge amounts of information, you're going to pay for it. So
I don't know. Have you guys talked to folks who are actually trying to develop the travel agent software? That people are actually building it?
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing is going and talking to those organizations. So we're talking to all sorts of people, including a new spinoff from what was what Sabre. Sabre split a number of years ago into the airline and the hospitality. So we're going to be doing trials with the new spinoff of hospitality. So that's a hotel chain. So a lot of the hotel chains, particularly the upper end hotel chains, are very interested in deep personalization. But initial conversation. So the prototyping will be happening with that probably Q1 next year. In terms of using this profile, and the approach we're using is using Drummond called micro sharing. You ask specifically for what stage you are, and one of the things that's interesting about the travel is they've long had a very clear segmentation of a trip, from exploration through shopping, through booking, boarding your, getting into the travel system, while you're in progress in travel, right? Post travel. So they already have and had for many years. Here's the information you need at which stage. So asking for your passport and your credit card when all you're doing is saying, tell me the rough cost of a trip to Paris for 2 weeks is already an industry no-no. Right. So it should be interesting to see what the reception is to, you need the data, ask for it when you need it, but I'm not, do not persist this information because it could be stale by the time you ask for it. Then, if you store it, it's stale. And if it's on your server, your insurance company is going to give you a very large incentive not to hold on to it. So we'll see where that one goes, because the insurance industry, as we all know, really determines a whole bunch of things. Like rebuilding a house in what is now a known new floodplain, or that has experienced 2 massive floods in the last 5 years. Well, guess what? Your insurance does. Right.
Yeah.
So. So we shall see.
Anything else on the workshops? IW.
Did you attend the agentic one right after?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I went to the Friday. That's the Friday.
Oh, yep.
Let me see. What did I listen to? I listened to a group of people in IETF working on a OAuth alternative. So I was trying to figure out what they can, because these were people who are very deeply, involved in all the designs related based on OAuth, and what kind of issues they came up with. And I think, well, they wouldn't use, they are allergic to anything quote unquote decentralized, but the issues they raised are similar. So that's interesting. The second one, I'm trying to remember, there was the second one I went to. And the third one is Drummond talking about, first person part. More or less,
Okay.
that's what I went to for that one day. And in the PyTorch conference, most of the work agent, definitely we heard from each of the major protocols. So there's a guy from OpenAI talking about MCP, there's A2A people, and there's a few others. One of them is from Microsoft, and the interesting portion is, I think, reinforcement learning or online learning procedures, which is actually going to make the so-called disclosure dramatically harder. I think that's technically, in terms of agent capability, because we were talking about earlier, we think there's only, some people think there's only 2.5% improvement of something, which is a big deal to me, but still it sounds like a small number. So there's a high pressure for them to make the agent even more powerful. And one of the direction would be to reinforcement learning. So essentially you will be constantly learning something, which makes disclosure impossible to sort of, it's impossible to forget, right? Once they've seen it, it will learn it and integrate into the model itself. Nikki.
Yeah, I put in the chat this report AI 2027, which is done by some, foresight thinkers with excellent creds in the States. And the scenario they put there is that by 2026, agents will learn from each other. So we tend to think of reinforcement learning as an element of human in the loop. But where they're learning from your behavior, like a recommendation engine is a classic reinforcement learning model, isn't it? So they're but the prediction is that quite quickly the agents will start training each other, and so learning from less behavior, more outcomes. And that's where the scale or goals, how to achieve goals.
Yeah.
And there are quite a few demos of how quickly that goes south.
Yeah.
When they start gaming this system and cheating and lying and all that kind of thing. So it just, for me, it reinforces the importance not just of governance, but of machine readable and machine enforceable governance, which kind of goes back to some of the things we were talking about with reference to the framework in earlier conversations.
Nikki, your last point, right, is exactly what I got out of that conference. When I was sitting there, I was thinking that at the end of the day, because there is a simplistic model, as if we were saying, oh, here is a bunch of data, here is my model, or you can think of it as a code, and the two are somehow separate. And that ain't be the case, seems like, in the future. So the governance model then logically would only have to be a behavior sort of policing of the behavior, not rather than knowledge, right? Because you can control the data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, um so I think there are a couple of interesting things that we've done in Trust over IP that have a bearing on this.
Mm.
But so one is ethical framing for governance, principles driven, um, and how you kind of carry that through. And there are some things that we learned when we did the YOMA governance framework about what's available for introducing ethical frameworks, which might be any number of ethics. You know, it could just be the ethics of a bad actor and the goals associated with that, or it could be something that we think of as ethical as opposed to the implementation of ethics, which are two different things. So you can learn some stuff from accountancy decision frameworks, whereas in most digital models, it's a kind of game theory, rational decision making framework that's implemented. So so that's the first thing. I mean, I think there are some much simpler steps. And what for me it emphasizes is that the key piece of work with any framework, trust framework, governance framework, agent framework, is the roles and the processes, less the principles, because they don't really matter unless you can realize them in the behaviors and actions of the system. If that makes any sense. But I just wanted to add one thing, further thing to this reinforcement learning conversation, and that is that we should bear in mind that reinforcement learning is rarely used in isolation. It's nearly always used in combination with supervised or unsupervised or deep learning.
Correct. That's the kind of reinforcement we were referring to nowadays. Is is integrated into that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the key words here is that, what's the difference, right, between what the model or the ChatGPT type of we think we know of, is that the LM model itself are constantly changing.
Absolutely. It's constantly changing its weights and
Versus like
and everything. Yeah.
our classical understanding is there's a model doesn't change, and then we call a one-shot or zero-shot learning, which is really not, you're not modifying the model, you're simply accumulating data in your short-term memory.
And in terms of the implication for what did you say it was? The implication for not consent.
Well, the easy way for easy example would be like if you disclose something to it,
disclosure.
it's going to integrate that information into the model itself. And so
So the
there's
right to be forgotten goes away.
you cannot forget it,
Yeah.
you cannot delete it. Yeah. And therefore to if you want to guide that the use of that disclosed data, you will need to control the agent's behavior rather than simply a database somewhere you can delete.
So
you
sorry, go ahead.
well, so just so imagine you input some company data so that it can help you. And you say, I want you, the old way of thinking is that they would use that data to make a decision, produce the output, and then you'd be on your way. And you're saying that they're going to keep that data because they want to be able to go back to it to see if they made the right decision and sort of adjust as needed.
It's not they'll keep that data. It's that because they've seen the data, it's like you have a consultant. You disclose something to the consultant, right? The consultant has seen the data.
You're not going to forget it.
You can say, "Oh, destroy it." Okay, they will destroy it, but the consultant remembers it in his brain. And that will be the same thing if you have introduced online or active reinforcement learning. Then the model is remembering something, not literally the data you give it to it, but some sense of that is absorbed into the model.
Right. And you may not be able to go back and say, reproduce that information that I gave you, but it will have incorporated into its new layer.
So that the control, we used to have absolute control. You can say, delete this file, and ChatGPT will never know about it again, right? But now you can't. You will have to say, ChatGPT, behave yourself, never use that data again. And that's very soft. And even if whether that's possible, we don't know, right? But even if it is, that kind of governance is very different from the first kind.
Yeah.
But in a very fundamental way, this is nothing new. I remember like over 20 years ago doing a special project for the C-suite at Vodafone Group on controlling use of location data by third parties. And the essential conclusion we came to is once they've seen it, you cannot control its further use except through contractual and legal mechanisms.
Exactly.
And so this really points to the importance of relationships between AI systems or agents and that chain of liability and accountability, because it's always been the case that the data doesn't really matter. It's what you do with it that counts.
Yeah.
So the same applies to AI agents. It's just that the controls are much more complex and it's much more dynamic, as you say. So because it's good, it's not going to forget that data, and it's going to use that data in the model, not just for responding to you, but also to everyone else who's using that model. It has very wide implications.
Yeah. So come back to link the two together, right? If we have a trust framework, we can define roles and processes. Then our assumption has to be that we can deal with this kind of a behavior. I don't know what the right term. I want to separate from sort of data management, that you can go delete the data, I share with you, right? Never use it again. To a kind of a behavior management. I know this information, my private information, but never disclose it. As you are controlling the LLM's behavior, even though it knows it need to not disclose it. And how do we, what is the proper mechanism, both in terms of like specifying, even if you want to write a contract, right, for human use, how that contract should look like. So that's what I think, Nikki, you meant by like this, in the trust framework, we need roles and processes. And
yeah, so it's an ethical decision making framework or mechanism.
Okay.
And that can support the principles in the trust framework, but like that, you know, it functionally, if we want functional governance that acts as kind of product and code as opposed to a pile of documents,
Yeah,
then it's those roles and processes that we need to focus on because
because in
policies
order to
matter less.
in order to automate something like that, we will need to be able to say something in a machine readable format, and there need to be a way, a method, a mechanism that you can enforce it.
Yes, and do the trust assurance piece, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
audit it and all that kind of thing. I wonder if Wenjing, in the line above, you said data management to behavior management. I think possibly goals management is something else that we should think about when it comes to agents.
And that the one of
I
the
see.
problems that we
So you have
have
an
with data.
objective, and how do you, how do you achieve?
Yeah, and how do you frame that, which goes back to context engineering and prompt engineering, which are in the
Yeah,
Well, the,
background.
yeah, I think that is one of the big problems is that they are so goal oriented that they put blinders on and they're like, I must achieve this goal. And and they do whatever they can and they present it as having achieved the goal.
I
A-
see. So can you
at-
put a goal, for example, say not disclose this information? Can that be a goal?
but that's a behavior, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, it is. And
But
that's the kind of wrong we are getting into, right? Once the data itself is not enough, then that's what I don't know whether.
because they'll be like, oh, don't disclose this data. Okay, well, how do I achieve my goal where I need to disclose the data? So I'm going to figure out some way to say that I didn't, and whatever. They just, um, I mean, all the studies that we've seen that they are, um,
Yeah, well, that's depending on how you state the goal. Do you put, um, put not disclosure of private data as the top priority versus a secondary goal?
well, isn't this guardrails? I mean, how do you define guardrails? Like,
Most of the guardrails that people talk about today are trained behaviors. So you basically give a lot of training data, many examples of say, oh, you do this is bad, do that is good. And that training behavior softly is not absolute, so statistical. At that most of the time, the model would do quote unquote the right thing. And this is very vague, right? What is the right thing? And we all can easily come up with dilemmas that you will beat the algorithm for sure.
mhm.
But is that something kind of management we want to propose? I mean, that is a way to deal with it.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure that most of the like the AI industry seems to be working very hard into that direction. So wouldn't be surprised in the short term, let's say next year, we will see models release that has these active IO components already baked in. They're reporting very high efficiencies. The software has improved a lot. So there's open source, very efficient and well-known open source code available now. There's even a Meta released a framework and software that you can do testing in a so-called safe sandbox, so that you can enable this IO. They know IO is very dangerous in that sense because you are basically modify your brain at the same time, right? So, so you don't know which direction you're going to go. So, but all that software look very mature. People can start to running it, and um, uh, with the exception of hardware limitation, you still need a lot of GPUs to run. But except that, the software seems to be very mature. Anybody can actually start testing and doing IL in that stage. So it seems like
I mean, I guess the like we talked about is you've the agent has absorbed the data, and to tell them not to use that, you can't how will you be able to tell if they do use it?
Well, that's always the case, though. Whether you tell or not, that's a separate, I think, orthogonal question. But that would be like auditing, for example. Can I go back to audit data, something like that? You're absolutely right. If the model actually use it, if all of that is embedded in the model itself, then there's no external behavior. It's all within your head, right? So I'm sure we all know this. It's just that, like, if you have a consultant or lawyer or somebody, some unethical thought goes through their mind. Well, that you
As
cannot.
long as they don't act on it.
You have no way to please, right? They can disclose, actually use the information without saying they disclose it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that happens every day, right?
Right.
But that behavior is in your head. How do you it seems like
it's like when you sign an NDA with a client, right? You're not going to go out and say exactly what was discussed, but every day you gain more knowledge, you gain more experience. What
and
you
you're
need
going to use that knowledge.
You
And
can't
whether
use it
that's a
specifically,
disclosure.
but if you learned a new skill set when you were working for that client,
yeah,
you're going to continue using the skill set. You're not going to attribute it to the client, maybe. The only way to prove actually where did you learn that is to have the data provenance to be able to go back and say, oh, when he was in kindergarten, Stephen learned how to go to the bathroom by himself from this teacher, right? So that's the only way you could do that. And I don't imagine anybody in the world is going to spend that much electricity to go back to see when did I learn to go to the bathroom by myself.
And the other example I thought would be like a inside trading. If you have inside information, you may not want to go do that, but you can give enough hint to somebody else go do it, and it's really hard to prove you
say
did.
Why now?
Yeah.
Can't you do this? I mean, this practice of sort of radioactive dye in the in the data, so that if it actually is used, that it
You'd
shows
have to
up.
be able to go back to the point in time when the AI had that data, was educated or learned from the data, and then someone said remove the data, and now you know what I mean? Like you have to be able to
Yeah,
roll
exactly.
back
Yeah,
the database, roll back and say, oh, that's where you got that information from.
yeah.
But
You will
it's
have
not going to
to.
say, oh, it was data value, key value pair X equals Y. Aha, caught you. Because you
Yeah.
didn't. It's not going to be X equals Y. It's going to be the concept behind how does X equal Y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah. And Nikki?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as you've been talking, you said something earlier, Wenjing, which is important, is it's in your head, it's knowledge, it's not data at that stage. And the folks at TNO, ESIF Lab, did these mental models and glossary and everything. It was all the work that Reeks did, which was fantastic. And knowledge is specified as a core underlying component. I just put the link into the party actor action model, which nearly all of us use nearly all the time, but it specifies, how knowledge is used. If you look at the data model, the diagram, which is just a little bit down that page, you'll see knowledge as it relates to objectives and policies determine, is an active component. So I just wonder if there's something we could learn from that or use to build on from that. So if you scroll down in the page a little bit, Wenjing, you'll see there's a beautiful model there. You can see knowledge on the right-hand side.
I see. So the issue with sort of a modeling a internal thinking process is essentially trying to capture the LM model usage and its computation. It's not theoretically impossible, but the cost of doing that is tremendous. So
because it's knowledge, it's not data. It
yeah,
can't be forgotten. It can't be governed and managed in the same way. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it?
it is. For example, one can say, hey, if a company produces a LM, you can say, I want to audit, some neutral party come to audit it by testing it, probing it, etc. So based on this model's external behavior, you will imply that this model is quote unquote good. That's one way. The other way, like Eric mentioned earlier, is say, well, can I divide this model into pieces and say, basically you want to go into the internal of the LM model itself, and in some early research are able to do that and say whether you are reference certain things or not. Like a die, you mentioned die. I think in LM there's this knowledge of a concept. So a node, for example, you can see a lot of thinking are going around this node, and you can produce that kind of a I guess imagery, something like that. Presumably that's possible. Maybe in a distant future, we may be able to do something like that. But at this moment,
It's
seems
like it
like
lights
a
up
very
a certain part of the
costly.
brain.
Yeah. You can say, oh, it's like you go to a court and use a brain scan as evidence. Say, hey,
Right.
I proved to you in that moment you were thinking about this, right? Something like that. In theory is potentially possible, but it's tremendously not practical and costly at the moment. And I don't know whether it's a good thing to probe that way for humans. So most of the roles, and like this picture, for example, talking about observable behavior. And for the LM, the observable behavior as of today is what it utters, right? The input and the output of text streams.
Yeah, but there's the chain of thought stuff as well. It tells you
The
what
chain
it's
of
doing.
thought stuff,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, it's a narration, and all of that are relatively easily observable, and you can build some kind of a governance framework around those things.
But yeah, I think it's hard to see anything other than almost like humans. It's like you may know how to build a bomb, but until you actually plan it and or do it, there's not much we can do. So
Yeah.
governing
The other
outcomes.
type we could do is like a human again, that sometimes we say, well, if you want to be a stockbroker, you must take this class and pass it. Now that is a doable governance framework that you could say, well, in order for your LM to be used in this domain, you must take this training data.
All right.
That's
Well,
an
but
interesting
then
idea.
Yeah,
within the reinforcement learning, you'd have to test it every day because
it
the
kind of,
model would change every day.
That's what people do. Oh, every 6 months you have to redo this test.
well, because yeah, it's not the same person taking the test. But yeah, the other thing I'm been thinking about is how to incorporate intent, because intent is a signal as much as it sort of directs the action and the expected outcome, and but I'm trying to figure out how it is actionable.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Very good discussion. We capture a little bit of it. I'm very bad note taker, but maybe we want to just spend 3 more minutes. Is the framework task force
So I've
time
got
done?
the big problem. I scheduled it, and then I immediately I'm on a big project now that is that took that time
I see.
that I scheduled it for every week, and then I have every single afternoon now slotted, and I think I might have to do a morning, and so it's going to be open just to European or Asian contributors until things change. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Okay, so that's still ongoing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will just quickly report on my side, been preparing for this. So this, presumably I think we should structure it as a task force too, but this would be to write that spec. It will be done in GitHub. And my original name was just TMCP, and now people think we should generalize it so that it's not just restricted to MCP. It doesn't really have to, and so will be anything X over TSP. So that's the goal, and this should be very easily, clearly defined.
What about agent over TSP?
Well, it's not agent, it's the agent protocol. So agent communication protocol or
Yeah.
anything, yeah, the protocol over TSP. And so I'm just going to say agent, AI agent or autonomous agent protocol over TSP. And we will use MCP or A2A as examples, but the general approach would be standardized and usable for anyone. And so that's the goal, and hopefully this will be well defined so this task force wouldn't last forever. And so I don't intend to go create a new meeting. It would be very difficult anyway. And so it would be just have discussions and reports in this meeting as we make progress.
Mm-hmm. Did you have some people on your team working on that, or is that just you?
Software-wise, it's mostly done. So we have
All right.
the software is already implemented. There's a lot of example already done, and we have a couple of interns who are actually working on implementing more examples. So
Like real
there's
people.
a young fellow, really good undergrad from India. He's implementing credential checking over this protocol.
Nice. All right. Love to see that when you've got some of those use cases fleshed out, or will you demo that or on the?
Yeah, I'm thinking about maybe like on the second day of the symposium, I may just be very informal, and we were just like, hey, let's run, look through some code together. That'll be my workshop. I'm not trying to teach anybody, but I can run some codes, together with whoever is interested. And maybe that will be it.
Yeah, and they'll ask questions. Yeah.
And ask questions, and I'm not prepared. Basically, I don't have time to go do all that, but we can do some demo, and people have questions or ask questions, and we can look through code together, anything like that. So maybe I would, yeah.
It's a good idea.
Okay. So the task force mainly is just to write down the language and document. It's mostly writing. there's not too much of like research or anything to be done at this point. So I hope this will be a relatively quick task force to finish it.
Okay. Sorry, I've got to run.
All right. So for next week, we can follow up on I guess the trust framework topic we're discussing.
That would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Have a good week, guys. Take
All right.
care.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.